Hey everybody, it's Lebo with Lebo's Pinball. And last video that we were doing here on this Getaway restoration, I had talked about the coil, or I showed how we replaced the coil that involves this whole little diverter. So that diverter's now, all put back together. We put this shiny new Supercharger housing in place. It looks really nice. And we also went ahead and swapped out the plastics that were on here. So here we go on this side as well as that. And this whole Supercharger is standing pretty tall, and it's really ready to go back into the game. And speaking of the new plastics, I do have one other plastic I need to put into place over here. And I got thinking, before I go putting that on, maybe I'll just take a minute just to kind of show you, hey, whenever you're swapping out plastics, there's a couple little things. I mean, it seems like that no one really would make a video about swapping plastics, but what's interesting about that? Well, there's a couple little things I figured I'd mention. Like, look at this. There's some funny little things that you can kind of have as an optional thing that comes along with some of the plastics that get recreated. Yes, they are recreated, and they will have them just like the originals, but then they'll sometimes will have a little fun and throw in some extra things. Like, let's see if I can find the, let's look over here. So here, take a look. Here is the original one, and it may be a little hard to tell in the video, but there's some stuff that's kind of like the white is not quite that whited out, and things have kind of bent and worn, kind of warped a little bit here. But we've got we have this original plastic, and then there's an alternative one here, and which is the one I'm gonna go with. So little funny things like, okay, like drive 65 and stay alive, or now we're gonna have drive 185 and feel alive. Funny little things that they're throwing in here. So this one I've already basically transferred. There's little plastic standoffs that go from the lower piece of plastic to the upper one, and then same thing again on this third level here. And you can see where I've already added in the little light, like I talked about on some of the other, there were some other areas underneath the gauges. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah, these gauges that I had pointed out where we had added those little lights underneath it. But by switching plastics out, I can tell here, look how much wider that looks compared to that. And clear sections of plastic, like through here, take a look at this. Here's how yellowed out it looked before. You can see how it looks pretty bad. Here it's perfectly clear. The same way here with like this, the clear plastic that's right here on this gauge. If I were to find the other one, it's not horrible, but you can see it's really kind of yellowed out. So that's one of the reasons why you'd want to do it. These plastics, they're not always available. There was one company, I think it was a Pinball Rescue, that used to be in Australia, and that they closed back around the time that COVID hit. It was a real loss because they provided a lot of plastics for games, mainly for a lot of EM machines. And honestly, I haven't found a really good source at least for getting a lot of those plastics again. But on more modern games, a lot of the solid state games, Marco and and some others, they do have some plastics, which is great. But anyways, I want to just point out just some of the alternative stuff that Marco did with this kit. So that one was kind of funny. You got buckle up is a law, and then drink up, race the cops. What in the world? And then there's this piece right here. Really nothing really fancy on this, but here's just what I'm going to do. I'm going to swap out. I got to go take this whole thing apart. I'm just going to show you what I'm going to do here just kind of quickly, and then use these new pieces to basically convert over to this. And the reason why this looks all opaque is because it's got there's a plastic film that's over the top of it here that we're going to peel off, and then there's like a paper backing that comes off. So once you pull all that off, it looks really nice, and it's ready to be all put back together. So we're gonna put this one together, get this thrown in the game, and I think we're gonna be ready to throw the Supercharger back on. So hang tight. Oh yeah, and by the way, in case I didn't mention it, so these other alternative plastics that came with the kit, again, they were alternative. The original, or whatever the original design replacement, they come with it too. I just chose not to use it. So if you were doing your game and you don't want to go with something crazy like this and you want to stick with the original, you definitely have that option. Of course, this is, you know, kind of foggy looking because I didn't peel the plastics off of that. But, you know, same way with this one. You got the buckle up, it's the law. Of course, I'm going to go with that. But, you know, the original one's there with it too. So anyways, let's go get over here and get this piece done here. That way I can put this back in the game. And that's going to be really the main remaining piece that I think I need to have put in before I can put that supercharger in. So let's get rolling. All right, so we got it all put together. Looks a lot better than this old faded out junk. So, all right, let's take this over here to the game and I'll show you where it's gonna go. It's basically, you can see the screw hole there where that one goes. This side right here, this little black piece is just basically acting as a standoff. There's no screw that goes through it. This one here, I gotta take that nut off right where that post is and that's gonna slip in there and we'll get that in position. All right, so we got the plastic in. That was the last piece before we could put the supercharger in place. Boy, I feel like I'm out in the garage working on the hot rod when I get to say I'm getting ready to install the supercharger. All right, so I'm gonna come up here and grab it off the workbench. It's been a while since this has been in the game. Couple things ready here. All right, so this thing's kind of heavy. I remember the first time I was working on my Getaway, I thought this thing was just like really heavy. It's actually not that bad. I just felt like it was a big old chunk of, you know, big old assembly. And it is. All right, so looks like there's really 1, 2, 3, 4 main mounting screws that this thing is held in place on. And then you're gonna have a couple more screws that help hold the flap right down to the play field. But I'm just kind of right now just sort of getting things kind of lined up, sort of in place. Oh, come on now. All right, now there is this one main harness. It's really the only harness, and it goes down right underneath this little turnaround into the corner. So I'm gonna have to fish that down. I may have to actually kind of pull this back out, maybe, to get it fished down, but I'm just going to kind of play with it here for a little bit. It's just going to take a little bit of finagling, and then once we get it seated, then we'll be tightening screws and nuts down, and we'll be done with the supercharger install. All right, so I got the supercharger sitting in here. It's pretty much right where it needs to be. A couple things that I have noticed. I guess this is just maybe inherent to it, I don't know. So notice how like this bottom part's not seating down all the way. If I give it a little bit of push, it'll go. So it should be fine once I run the screws in there down at the bottom. But what the reason for that is, as it's sitting here, it's interfering just a little bit with this plastic, which I don't know if this needs to shift over to the left a little. I don't think it does. I just think it's just the nature of it, because if I tighten this end up down here and put the screws to tighten that down, that should be okay, but I just don't like that it's really pushing it. But I don't know if there's that much I'm going to be able to do about that. It does flex and get out of the way, so I'm going to go ahead and keep moving forward. I did get this cable fished down through. I did have to kind of move things out a little bit just to give me some room. And one concern also that I did have, but I just checked my Getaway too. Seeing the diverter coil where the terminals are pointing down at the bottom, you know, is that enough clearance for the ball to roll through? And I checked and it is. So really there shouldn't be an issue with that. And like I said, I checked my game, it's done the same way. So I think we're good to keep moving forward. All right, so the supercharger is now officially installed. We got all the screws and fasteners in. So now it's time, we gotta give it a little quick test to make sure everything's working correctly on it. So easiest way to do this is in the test mode, the test number 15, you can see right there, it's a supercharger time test. So basically it's gonna test the supercharger. It's going to basically take the diverter gate and open it up here so that when the ball comes up this ramp here, instead of it just going around this turnaround, it will actually open up and it will send it through the supercharger. So what we're going to hear is right when it first hits the coil, it should hit like this power stroke, kind of like on a flipper, where, you know, except flippers, they have the power coil and then they have a hold coil. Once it hits the end of stroke switch, that's when it knows where it's at. This one doesn't really have an end of stroke switch. It just has a timer to where it just hits it hard there for a little bit and then it'll just hold it. So that's what we're gonna do. Right here, we're gonna start the test. Let's see what happens here. All right, so you heard the buzz and you can see that the diverter is open. So now we need to just find the ball and hopefully the supercharger is working. Here we go. Might be an issue if it's not measuring something, maybe the output may not be working. Anyways, we're going to stop the ball and there we go. All right, so we're going to keep moving forward, but closing it down for the night. Thanks for watching and we'll pick it up next time.